Hello guys, today we will solve ransom note Leetcode problem. We are given two strings called ransom note and magazine, those are our inputs, and we have to return true as an output if ransom note can be constructed using the letters from the magazine. False otherwise if we cannot construct ransom note. Each letter, the important note here, each letter in the magazine can only be used once in the ransom note. So the problem is asking us if we can construct, given a set of letters, list of letters, a string, magazine, can we use some or all the letters there to construct the ransom note? So for example, in this example one, we have ransom note A, and all the letters we have in magazine is just basically a B. So we cannot construct A from B, so we have to return false. In the second example, we have two A's in the ransom note, but to the magazine we only have A and B, and we have one A. We don't use the B from the magazine, but we are missing one A because by the problem statement we can only use one letter once, so we can only use this A once. If we for example had A B A, then a ransom note could have been constructed. And that example you can see here, we have two A's and two A's in the magazine. We will just not be using the B, and we can construct the ransom note, so we return the true. Constraints are pretty straightforward. The length of the both ransom note and the magazine are ranging from 1 to 10 to the 5th. And one more important note, the ransom note and magazine consist of lowercase English letters. And if you remember, this problem is pretty similar to the valid anagram problem. The only difference is that ransom note can be a shorter string than the magazine, and in most cases it will be. And we can use the same functionality that we had, the same procedure that we had using incrementing the letter when we find it in the magazine and decrementing the letter when we find it in the ransom note. And at the end, if we have all letters, all counts for the letters larger or equal to 0, then we know that we can for the ransom note. We only have to. The only scenario where we can't form it is where we have 0 value that's lesser than 0 in the frequency map. So, for example, let's say we have A, and B for the magazine. I will just note this M. And for the ransom note, let's say we have AA. So we will increment A twice for this one, for this, and B once. So, and for the ransom note, we will decrement by 2. So we will decrement first 1 and then decrement to 0. And then when we traverse this array, we will see that all elements are larger or equal to 0. So the ransom note can be constructed. For example, if we had, for magazine, if we have AA, B, C, and for the ransom note we had AAD, the count, once we have traversed the magazine and the ransom note would be, so for A, we would have 2 A's. We will first increment by 1 and then increment again by 1, so total will be 2. But then again, once we traverse the ransom, we will decrement by 2, so it will go to 0. Then for B, we will have only 1 because it's only the magazine, so we increment by 1. And for C, it's basically the same. But for D, we will have -1 because the initial value will be 0. So if we decrement 0, it will be -1. So once we traverse, we will see that we have a value that's lesser than 0. So that means that the ransom note cannot be constructed. And because it's all English letters, we only need 26 elements to represent the whole frequency map. So that leads us to a constant space of complexity. And because we are only traversing the strings, the magazine will always be either greater in length or the same. So the total time complexity would be that of the length of the magazine. Here M is basically just the length of the string that's given as magazine. We'll code up the solution. We will first start by checking if the ransom note length is greater than the magazine. In that case, we just cannot construct it because they are more letters in the ransom node than there are in magazine, so we just return false. Otherwise, we can proceed with our logic that we used in the example before. We will first declare the frequency map. In this case, because we only have English letter, the 26 elements will be enough. And then we will first traverse the magazine string, and for each letter, we will basically just increment the corresponding element to the corresponding index, which basically tracks the frequency of the letter. We are using the same trick as we did in the valid anagram problem. We are just decrementing the letter A to map it to the right index. Then we will traverse the ransom node, and it will be just the opposite. We will decrement, and each time we will check if the value, the frequency, goes below 0. And if it goes, we will just return false. Because in that case, there are one letter, one letter is appearing more in the ransom node than it's appearing in the magazine. So we cannot construct our ransom node. If we traverse the whole ransom node without breaking early from the for loop, we can just return true. And basically that solves our problem. In this case, the ransom node can be constructed from the magazine, so we can safely return.